Welcome to this webinar, the 3 levels of body communication. My name is Kim Knight from kimknighthealth.com. Our agenda today is how our body communicates to us in 3 levels of communication. So we're going to look at what are these 3 levels, why do we have 3 levels, what happens if we don't use these 3 levels, and what happens when we do use the 3 levels. You know, what are the consequences in our life of implementing these 3 levels of communication. And as always, the purpose of these weekly videos is to help you get a fresh perspective, to help you see things differently. Because often if we're stuck in a problem, it's actually because of our perspective. And if you imagine looking at a chair and you're looking at it from above, and then you lie down on the ground and you look at the underneath of the chair, you're going to see something that you didn't see before, that was always there, but you didn't see it before. So most of my work, to be honest, is helping people to see things that they didn't see before, so that they get this totally new perspective, which brings with it new solutions and new answers. So our body has what we could call 3 levels of communication, and it's how we speak to ourselves, how we internally communicate within ourselves about how we're feeling emotionally, mentally, physically. And it's an inbuilt feedback system that we all have, but not everybody is using it. And often, and usually actually what happens is that we stop using or knowing how to use this inbuilt system. It's like we come pre-programmed literally with this system at the moment of birth, but because of events that happen to us in the early years of our life, we unconsciously stop using this system, and that can lead to a lot of detrimental consequences, such as feeling either unhappy or being sick and unhealthy. So we must learn how to use these multiple intelligences that we have inside of us, that most people have got disconnected from, and they either don't know these intelligences are there, or they don't know how to use them, and they're either unconsciously or semi-consciously ignoring them. But we have to learn how to retrain ourselves to use these 3 levels of communication and these multiple intelligences. And in fact, they are, as you're going to see, multiple brains. And the purpose of these multiple intelligences are to keep us happy and healthy. So either we'll go down a track in our life where we're unhappy, we're not on purpose, we're not doing what we want to do, we're not doing what we came here to do, and we end up unhealthy with sickness, or we'll be on track, we'll be happy, we'll be healthy, we'll be on purpose. And learning how to listen to these multiple intelligences is absolutely key to which road we take. So let's start with level 1. And our body has this inbuilt mechanism inside of us to feed back to us how it feels about everything that's going on in our environment. And that environment is both internal environment in terms of our thoughts, but also our external environment in terms of what's happening around us in our work, in our family life, people, events, situations. And so this inbuilt system, it automatically feeds back to us, this is how I'm feeling about XYZ situation or XYZ person. But this first level of communication is not in words. And of course, we're so trained in our society and in our schooling system to listen to or to think words all the time, because we're so much in our thinking brain, thinking, 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day running through our mind. But irrespective of what's going on in our mind, these sensations are being generated internally, automatically, by certain parts of our body, giving us a feedback of, this is how I feel about what's going on in my life. And we can call these sensations, felt sensations. And an example of a felt sensation is a gut feeling, for example. So you could be talking with somebody and your gut will give you an automatic response of, that doesn't feel right. That just doesn't feel right. Maybe I don't fully understand why with my head, but my gut is giving me this feeling of this doesn't feel right. The gut can also feed back, this does feel right. And that will be more like the excited, positive butterflies in the stomach feeling. And even though sometimes it can feel a little scary, it can still feel exciting. So we have to learn to tune into what is going on, because, by the way, these sensations and felt sensations are in large part felt in the gut. It's not just the gut, but in large part felt in the gut. And so we have to learn to take note of these gut sensations, because if we don't, we're gonna move into problems. And I'm going to give an example in a minute once I've gone through the 3 levels. So our body sends us sensations, and another good example of a sensation would be needing to go to the toilet. We all know what it feels like to need to go to the toilet. The body sends a sensation which we would not call a pain unless we leave it far too long, and then it will become very uncomfortable. And that is because the body is saying you need to go to the toilet. Now, how many times does our body, or has your body, sent you a sensation like that and you ignore it? And it's the mind that overrides. It's always this mind that is overriding at our peril. So if we don't listen to the sensations that our body is sending us, it will then ramp up the communication to the next level. And it will, in a sense, create more discomfort. And the next level of communication are emotions. And if we're talking about feedback where the body is saying this isn't the right thing, then it's going to be more of a negative or uncomfortable emotion, such as anger, sadness, frustration, loneliness, boredom, these type of emotions. Obviously, if it's a good feedback and the body is telling us, yes, you're on track, that's the right thing to do, then it's going to send us more of the positive feeling emotions like happiness, joy, contentment, etc. But for the purposes of this webinar, I'm mainly going to be focusing on the uncomfortable, so-called negative emotions. And they're only negative because they feel uncomfortable. They're meant to be negative. They're absolutely meant to be negative because they have a purpose. So when we have negative, inverted commas, emotions being sent, that is our body, our very, very intelligent body, you could say body mind, telling us this isn't right. This isn't right for me. It doesn't feel right. And therefore, I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling upset. I'm feeling hurt, whatever the emotion is. And the thing to know about emotions is that they never lie. And neither does level 1. Level 1 and level 2 here, and actually level 3, actually all these 3 levels, they never lie. They are the truth. They are the truth of how your body, mind feels. The question is, are you noticing this feedback? Are you honoring it? And are you doing something about it? So our body sends us these emotions. And because emotions are a form of energy, and I've spoken about this in other videos, emotions, emotion, once that emotion is generated inside the body, which happens spontaneously and automatically. It happens often without thinking until thinking kicks in and then more emotions are created. But at this point, we're just talking pre-thinking, pre-thought. Once the emotions are generated, because they are a form of energy and the law of physics says that energy cannot be destroyed, once that energy is generated or the emotions are generated, if we don't do something about them, if we don't clear them, or dissipate them out of our body, they stay in our body. And they just build up, build up, build up. And eventually, if this goes on for long enough, we start to get really unhappy, and we will even start to feel physical pain or fatigue. And this is all perfectly normal. This is the body working perfectly. The body has not made a mistake, and symptoms are not a mistake. They are there to tell us, you are not listening to me. I'm trying to tell you something about you, something about your life. I'm wanting you to change something. I'm wanting you to take better care of yourself. There could be many different messages underneath the symptoms and underneath the emotions and underneath the sensations. And it's our job, it's your job to interpret what is the message and the meaning beneath this communication. Because this is your body trying to keep you on track, trying to keep you healthy, trying to keep you happy. And if this is turning up, then we're missing pieces of the puzzle. And that's what we have to fill in. Now, also what happens at the same time, and this starts normally around the time somewhere between the body sensation and the emotions kicking in, is that our body will start to go in the stress response. And again, I talked about that in other videos. I'm not going to go into detail here, but our body will go into the stress response. And that is the natural fight, flight, or freeze response of the body, because it either thinks it's a real danger or there's a perceived danger, and it's trying to protect us. But the problem is, when our body goes into the stress response, and especially if it stays in the stress response for a prolonged period of time, and I'm talking months and years here, not just a few hours, it's like an ongoing state, every physiological function in our body changes because it thinks it's in danger. It thinks our life is literally in danger. And the interesting thing is, whether it's an emotional danger or a physical danger, the body responds in the same way. And I was just at a seminar 2 days ago with Dr. Bruce Lipton, who wrote The Biology of Belief, and he talks about how the environment changes our genes, and that's now called epigenetics. And he said exactly the same thing. And basically, stress really, really compromises our digestive system, our immune system, in fact, every system in the body, because everything shuts down. So, for example, all the blood vessels constrict in the digestive system, and that stops digestion working properly because all the blood is being diverted to the limbs and the arms in order to run away from this either real or perceived danger. But the interesting thing is, the definition of a real danger is if our life is literally physically in danger. Now, that may be happening for people who are in a war zone, or if you're just about to step off the curb and a bus is hurtling towards you and you didn't see it and it was about to run you over and you have to suddenly move back off the curb, or if you suddenly noticed your house was on fire, then your body, would need to run out of the house very, very quickly. Those are real dangers. But most people are stuck in this stress response, and there is no real physical danger. There is actually no real physical threat to their life, but they're still in this stress response. And this is what leads to a lot of negative emotions and eventually illness and deep unhappiness. So we have to learn how to reverse this. So coming to the brain and looking at which parts of the brain does this 3 levels of communication come from. And the first level, these gut sensations, these gut feelings, well, they come from the gut brain, which is part of and really connected with the brainstem and the reptilian complex, which is the oldest part of our brain. It's really to do with our survival. And most people know that. It's the oldest part of the brain. And then feelings and emotions tend to be more connected with the limbic system in the brain, which developed later after the brainstem and the reptilian brain. And then we have what we could call our thinking brain or our head intelligence, and that is the neocortex, which developed even later than these other 2 parts of the brain. And the 3 levels of communication that I've spoken about, they really relate here to the gut brain and the heart brain. But then, of course, what happens is the head brain, this neocortex, this intellectual thinking comes in, the rational mind comes in, and it rationalizes away why we shouldn't listen to our heart or our gut. And that creates a problem, because all three brains here have got a valid point. They all need to be listened to, and they need to work as a team. But what is happening with most people is that their head takes over, and they either semi-consciously or unconsciously ignore what the heart and the gut are saying. So I said before I was going to give an example, so I'll give a brief example, which was a very, very clear example to me of when I ignored my heart and my gut. So 20 years ago, I was working in film production. It was my dream career. I just trained for a full year in film production, and I was looking for a job. And it's quite hard to get work, especially full-time work in film production, because there are so many people looking for jobs. And I went to an interview with a company, and it was a full-time job. And we had this fantastic interview. And I was really excited. I was like, yes, I like this job, and I really like these people, and I want to work here. This will be a great opportunity. So that's my heart, right? That's my heart feeding me back how I feel about this and giving me really great feedback. Yes, this feels good. And then about 3/4 of the way into the interview, the director said to me, okay, I'm going to tell you the salary now. And he said, I'm really sorry, but we can't pay very much. And he told me what the salary was. And immediately my gut automatically responded, and it literally did a somersault because it was so low. It was just unbelievable. And my gut just did this somersault, literally turned, I don't know, 360 degrees inside my gut. It contracted, it constricted, and I felt literally, as we say, sick to my stomach. And my body also at the same time sent me frustration, right? So there's the emotion. There was the emotion there of frustration saying, oh, that's really frustrating because that's a really low amount and I'm not happy with that. So my heart had been feeding me back lots of positive vibes, but then my gut immediately, came in and said, hey, that's really not okay because you're worth more than that. And then my head came in with lots of rationalizations. And I'm sure, potentially as I'm telling this story, you may have similar incidents that have happened to you. And I'd like you to link up, okay, when did this happen to you? When did these three brains work like this inside you? So my head brain came in with rationalizations, and it said, oh yes, but it's really difficult to find a job, and I might not find another job, and I really like them, and I really like the job. So I had this incongruence between what my head, my heart, and my gut were telling me. And what I did at that time was I overrode. I consciously, even though it felt really uncomfortable to override my gut, I overrode with my head, and I ignored my true feelings, which was the frustration, and I accepted the job because they basically offered it to me on the spot. So I ignored my truth, I ignored the truth of what my gut was saying to me, and I overrode with my head. And ultimately that was because I didn't believe in myself enough. If I look back now, that was really what it was about. I didn't have enough self-esteem, self-confidence, self-worth, etc. And so I didn't believe that I would get a job, and so I took that job. Now, interestingly enough, over the next 9 months, this frustration over what I was being paid built up without me even realizing it. Because I was working really hard, I always do, I always give 100+%, and I was working really hard, I was enjoying the job, but underneath, these feelings of frustration were building up. And after a few months, they started, we go back to the slide here, that frustration was building up, and the stress was building up, and the gut feelings were still being sent, and I was ignoring all of that, and to be quite honest, mostly unaware of it. But I started to feel tired. Tiredness started to come in, and I couldn't understand why. I was just always tired. And it didn't matter if I had a good night's sleep or if I had a weekend off or even if I went away for a week, I was just always tired. So symptoms were starting to kick in, but I didn't know it at the time because I didn't understand how chronic fatigue works. But essentially, this was the chronic fatigue beginning. And after about 9 months, I was so tired, I just couldn't function. And I walked into work one day and I just quit on the spot. And that was the start of my journey to recover from chronic fatigue, which had me unable to work for 10 years. So this is how it works. And this is the peril of not listening to and honoring these 3 levels of communication. And the key here is that we have to become aware. We have to become aware of the gut sensations. We have to feel them. We have to notice them. We have to become aware of the emotions. We have to be able to identify them and then know how to clear them. We have to know how to deal with the situation so that the emotions are cleared. And then instead of ending up with unhappiness and symptoms and illness, we'll end up with happiness and contentment and health. So, as I said before, the number 1 rule for our body is survival. We need to stay alive, and we tend to forget that unless we're living in a war zone or somewhere where our physical safety is really under threat on a daily basis. And the gut brain is hugely responsible for this physical safety, which is why these sensations kick in first. The gut brain has to keep us safe. And it also has to keep us emotionally safe. So it's not just physical safety that it's looking out for, it's emotional safety. And as I mentioned before, the response in the body in terms of going into stress and the emotions and the illness, it's the same response if it's physical safety or emotional safety. It's all the same as far as the body is concerned. And the number 2 rule is that as a human being, we're here to be happy and fulfilled. But most people who've had a very unhappy childhood and then unhappy adulthood, they have completely forgotten and feel they don't even know that we're here to be happy and joyful and healthy, and that actually being happy and joyful and healthy is our natural state. It's like it's been so long that we've felt that we don't even know what it feels like, and we also find it hard to believe that it's possible. But our natural state is to be healthy and happy, and an unnatural state is to be unhealthy and unhappy. And it is good in a way if we're feeling unhealthy, unhappy, because that is our body intelligence telling us you're off track, you need to change something, you need to make some changes in your life. So let's look at these 3 levels of communication, these 3 parts of the brain. It's similar to the diagram I had before, just slightly different. And as I said, we have the brainstem, which is concerned with physical survival, and it triggers the fight or flight response, and it's always looking for where survival is in question. That's its role. It's automatic. You can't sidestep it, thank goodness, because we'd be in trouble if we could. This is automatic. It's pre-thought, and it's our most basic part of our brain to make sure that we stay alive. And then we have the limbic system, which is concerned with the emotional, and it's to do with our feelings, and it's also very connected with our heart and our values and what we value in life and how we relate to people in life. And then we have the logical neocortex, which is the newer part of the brain, which is to do with thinking and rationalizing and analyzing and making meaning and understanding. And the whole point here is that all these 3 parts of the brain, obviously they are all very important. It's not that one is more important than the other. They are all important, but they need to work as a team. And according to the sensory input that comes into our brain through our eyes, through our ears, through smell and taste and touch, we will have a response in these systems inside of us. And that is perfectly normal. That's how it's meant to work. So I've already shared some of the consequences of not listening to these 3 levels of communication and not knowing how to operate them, if you like. We're going to be stressed, we're going to be ill, unhappy, and have negative emotions. And the consequences, therefore, of learning how to use these 3 levels of communication is that we will feel happier. We will feel a sense of ease because we won't have the tension and constriction in our gut. Instead, we'll have the relaxation and the relief, and our body will be relaxed. It will be in the parasympathetic mode, and we will feel good. And as a consequence of feeling good, we will have health, because health is the natural consequence of happiness and ease. We need this sense of ease and happiness inside of us, and the natural consequence of that is good health. And that's just how it works. We have to train ourselves to listen and take heed of the gut brain and the heart brain, and learn how to get all these 3 brains working in alignment. And when they're in alignment, then something very special happens, and we really feel happy. We really are on track in life, and we can move forward with more happiness and health. So, unless there are any questions that are kind of come in the next 20 seconds, this will be the end of our webinar. I'm trying to keep them short and sweet, trying to keep them to 30 minutes because we're all busy. So, any last thoughts, feedback? CFS is the end of the long way of physical symptoms because the body wants you to listen to the emotions. Absolutely. Yes. Whatever the illness is, it's the end. And the end, it's that level 3 of communication. All illness and physical symptoms are level 3 communication, because the body has to get its message through. Because ultimately, if we don't listen to that message, and we don't listen to the communication, ultimately the body will take us out. We will get a more significant illness, maybe we'll get a cancer, who knows what we'll get. But ultimately, if we literally run ourselves into the ground, then we will run ourselves into the ground. And that is how it works. So we do have to backtrack, we have to work out what are the emotions, what is my body telling me, what do I need to change in my life, and it's all about change. Next time, our next weekly webinar is going to be your multiple brains, and going more deeper into the functions of these 3 brains, because actually they have what are called 9 core functions. There's 3 core functions in each brain, and then something very special happens when all 9 functions are being sort of used properly, and then they come together and they actually create something even more exciting. So I'm going to be sharing that next time on the next weekly webinar. And as always, you can always check out my website for upcoming events and information, and you can watch videos on YouTube, and this webinar will be uploaded to YouTube. And you can check out my online programs at kimknighthealth.com.